I found the letters on a Tuesday, the day the rain finally stopped and the sky over Mariner's Cove turned that bruised, tender purple you only get by the sea. I wasn't looking for them. I was just hiding. From the silence of my new apartment, from the polite, empty smiles of my new colleagues at the Marine Institute. I'd taken this job to study tidal patterns, to lose myself in data and salt water. But you can't outrun a quiet heart. You just carry it with you. The old lighthouse stood at the northern point, a crumbling sentinel of granite and rust. The town brochure called it historically significant. The locals called it a death trap. The salt-stung iron gate was chained, but someone had long ago cut a link, just wide enough for a person to slip through. My breath fogged in the damp air as I squeezed inside. It smelled of wet stone, old wood, and centuries of solitude. My footsteps echoed in the hollow tower, a sound that made my chest ache. I don't know why I pressed my palm against the wall paneling on the second landing. A tremor, maybe. A shiver. The wood gave with a groan. Not a break, but a sigh. And there they were. A bundle, wrapped in oilcloth, tied with a disintegrating length of twine. My hands were steady as I lifted it out, which surprised me. I carried it to a shaft of gray light falling through a broken window. The first letter began without a date. My dearest Eleanor, the fog is in again, thick as wool. The horn blares every 30 seconds, a sound that now only reminds me of the distance it creates. It carves this island from the world, and me from you. I write these by lantern light, pretending the scratch of the pen is the sound of your voice answering me. A foolish game for a grown man, a keeper of the light. But you have always been my true north, and I am adrift without your shore. I sat down hard on the dusty floor. The air left my lungs in a rush. His name was Eli. Hers was Eleanor. He was the lighthouse keeper in 1887. She lived in the town, in a white clapboard house he could see from the top of the tower on a clear day. Theirs was a secret love. Her family owned the cannery. His was just the sea. The letters were never sent. He wrote them anyway, sealing his heart into these pages and hiding them in the walls, a testament to a love that lived only in whispers and stolen glances. Today, another letter read, a schooner passed so close I saw the faces of the men on deck. One waved. I wondered if he had someone waiting, if the thought of her was a warmth in his pocket, like the locket of your hair I carry is for me. Does your father suspect? When you pass me in the market and your eyes dart away, it is a pain more precise than any storm. I read until the light faded. Their story unfolded in fragments of longing and fear. A planned meeting under the old dock, a kiss once in the rain, a hope for a future that seemed to slip further away with each passing season. Eleanor's letters weren't there, only his. A one-sided conversation spanning years. The last one was different. The handwriting was frantic, splattered with what I feared was salt water, or tears. Eleanor, they are sending me out. The supply ship is lost, they say, off the Black Rocks. I am the only one who knows that channel in a blind fog. I must sound the horn and take the dory. Do not think I go with a heavy heart. I go because it is the duty you once said you admired in me. But if the tide should turn, know that my last thought will be of the sound of your laugh, which I have heard only 6 times in my life. I have carved each one into my memory like notches on the mast. I love you. I have loved you since the first day I saw you mending nets on the beach, the sun turning your hair to fire. Forgive me. Remember me. Yours. Always. Eli. The paper trembled in my hands. A cold, deep certainty settled in my bones. He never came back. I sat in the gathering dark of the lighthouse, the ghosts of two strangers wrapping around my heart. I'd come to this town to study the ocean, to be clinical and observant. But Eli's words, they weren't data. They were a live wire. They were the echo of a love so vast and so stifled it had seeped into the mortar of this place. And I realized, with a jolt that made my throat tight, I was crying. Not for them. Not just for them. The tears were for my own silence, for the words I'd never said to someone now gone, for the love I'd tucked away in my own walls, thinking it was safer there. Eli's pain, 100 years old, had found the exact shape of the emptiness in me. I carefully rewrapped the bundle, but I didn't put it back. I held it to my chest. The wind picked up outside, whistling through the tower. It sounded like a horn, like a sigh. I knew then, standing in the dark of that forgotten place, that this wasn't over. Eli and Eleanor's story hadn't ended with that last letter. And mine couldn't start until I found the rest of it. I brought the letters back to my apartment. They sat on my kitchen table for 2 days, a silent accusation. I'd touch the oilcloth, then walk away. My work at the Institute suffered. I'd stare at salinity charts and see Eli's frantic handwriting. My boss, a kind man named Carl, asked if I was adjusting okay. I gave him a smile that felt as thin as tracing paper. I had to know about Eleanor. The town's historical society was a single room above the library, run by a woman in her 70s named Marnie, who wore hand-knitted sweaters and had eyes that missed nothing. I didn't mention the letters. Not yet. My voice felt too shaky to say their names out loud. Instead, I asked about the lighthouse keepers in the late 1800s. Marnie's gaze softened, then grew distant. "Ah," she said, the word heavy with knowing. "You've heard about the tragedy." My heart hammered against my ribs. Tragedy? "Elias Hale," she said, pulling a large leather-bound ledger from a shelf. "Keeper from 1885 to 1891, lost at sea trying to guide a foundering ship through the cove in a terrible nor'easter. His body was never recovered." She opened the ledger, her finger finding a line of elegant script. A quiet man, by all accounts, kept to himself. The official record was a cold, flat thing. It confirmed the last letter, but it told me nothing. Did he have family here? Marnie shook her head. No, he was a solitary figure. She paused, tapping the page. There was talk, of course, gossip that never made the ledgers. They said he was in love with Eleanor Vance. The name hung in the dusty air between us. Eleanor. It was real. She was real. What happened to her? The question came out a whisper. Marnie closed the ledger gently. She married, not long after Elias was lost. Married James Thatcher, the cannery owner's son. It was a good match, a sensible one. The way she said sensible made it sound like the saddest word in the world. I left with a heaviness in my steps. I walked past the white clapboard houses near the waterfront, wondering which one had been hers. Did she look out at the lighthouse every night? Did she listen for the horn? That evening, I went back to the lighthouse with a flashlight. I had to know if there was more. I searched every inch of the small keeper's cottage attached to the tower, my hands scraping over rough stone and splintered wood. Nothing. Just as despair began to curl in my stomach, I went back to the hole in the wall. I shone the light deeper, reaching my arm in up to the shoulder. My fingers brushed against something else, small, smooth, cold. I pulled out a locket. It was tarnished silver, heart-shaped, on a broken chain. My hands were trembling violently now. I pried the tiny clasp open with my thumbnail. Inside, on one side, was a single fine strand of auburn hair, faded with time. On the other, a tiny, exquisitely detailed photograph of a woman. She was young, with serious eyes, and a mouth that seemed on the verge of a smile. She was beautiful, and she looked resilient. This was Eleanor, but it was the back of the locket that stopped my breath. An inscription engraved in delicate script for E.H., my anchor in the fog, always, E.V. He had received something from her. This. She'd given him her photograph, her token. He'd kept it. He must have hidden it with the letters for safekeeping before he left on that last fatal trip. He intended to come back for it. I slumped against the wall, the cool metal pressed into my palm. He died with her laugh etched in his memory. She lived a long life, presumably, as Mrs. Thatcher, a sensible life. But that wasn't the story. The story was here, in this locket, in these unsent letters. The story was in the choice to love so fiercely it had to be hidden in walls. The story was in the courage to go out into a storm because it was your duty. The story was in surviving that loss, in carrying on. I thought I'd been searching for their ending, but I was really finding my own beginning. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done since I moved to Mariner's Cove. I called an old number, a number attached to a person I'd left behind with too much unsaid, cloaked in my own pride and hurt. The phone rang, and my pulse thundered in my ears. He answered. "Hello?" His voice, familiar and warm, sent a jolt through me. I closed my eyes, clutching Eli's locket in my other hand. It felt like a touchstone, a connection across time. "Hey," I said, and my voice didn't crack. It was clear. "It's Ava. I've been in this old lighthouse, and I found something. I need to tell you about it. I need to tell you a lot of things." There was a pause on the line, a silence that wasn't empty, but full of waiting. "I'm listening," he said. And for the first time, standing in the modern kitchen of my lonely apartment, holding a century-old secret, I finally felt ready to speak my own. Months later, on a clear, sparkling day, I stood with Marnie on the bluffs overlooking the cove. We'd become friends. I'd shown her the letters and the locket. Together, we'd arranged for them to be preserved and displayed in the Historical Society, with a small plaque telling the story of Elias Hale and Eleanor Vance. Not as a tragedy, but as a testament. The man from the phone call was coming to visit next weekend. We were taking it slow, but we were talking. Really talking. The lighthouse, I'd learned, was slated for a preservation grant. It would be restored, not as a museum, but as a monument to quiet devotion. I looked out at the water, where Eli had been lost, and where Eleanor had likely looked for a ship that would never return. The ocean that had taken him was the same one that now brought life to my research, that crashed rhythmically against the shore below. It was neither cruel nor kind. It just was. And we, with our fragile human hearts, got to build our love and our stories on its edge. The past doesn't whisper to haunt us. It whispers to remind us that we are not the first to feel this deeply, to love this bravely, to grieve this fully. And in that reminder, there is a profound kind of healing. I touched the locket's replica I now wore around my own neck, a gift from Marnie. The original was safe behind glass, where everyone could see it. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and pine. It didn't sound like a horn anymore. It just sounded like the wind. And for the first time in a very long time, the silence in my own heart felt peaceful. It felt like room to breathe. It felt, finally, like home.